The pen is mightier than the sword. The mind is the most powerful thing on the planet. And only by harnessing the human mind can we conquer the fossil fuel industry and do whatever it is that we are each able to do in this time of crisis. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Climate Emergency Forum. My name is Regina, and I'll be your host. And today's topic is climate emergency response. And that is, what is to be our response to global warming, climate change, climate feedbacks? What solutions do we have? Now, first, I want to just make something really clear. We're not saying that we're going to solve climate change or global warming, because that would be completely ridiculous. Changes are already baked in. I mean, what we have in the atmosphere, the carbon that is already here, it's here, okay? So unless there's any incredible technological brainchild that comes along and says that we can have this giant vacuum and vacuum all that up, it is what it is. But there is a fact that for every 10th of a degree that we can claw back on this, it will make the disasters that less disastrous. In other words, we have to try. We have to do what we can to make this earth as livable as it possibly can be. A lot of people have solutions. As I said, a lot of people are thinking about drawing carbon out of the atmosphere, bioplastics, so many different things. My solution that I think is the single most important solution that we absolutely must harness and cannot do without, and that's the human mind. We need to connect the human mind to the fact that we are living on this planet. We are not unitary beings. We are all living together, not just humans, not just mammals. All living beings share this planet, and until we can take that in, until we can understand that we are all dependent on this planet and the health of this planet, I don't think we have a chance. But this is why it's important not to give up hope. Because when you give up hope, you just say, to hell with it, it's done. And then anything goes. And it's hard not to get to that place, but we have to. We have to fight the urge to throw up our hands and say, to hell with it. And in fact, there are those who do believe that the fossil fuel industry wants us to be there. But we have to say yes to life, yes to planet Earth, yes to doing what we can. We have no choice. And what does this mean? This means having conversations with anyone and everyone about the reality of climate change. It does mean making changes on your own. Is it going to make a difference if I drive to the supermarket or take the bus? I mean, honestly, it's not. Will it make a difference if I use, let's say, glass instead of plastic? I think so. In the grand scheme of things, will it? Maybe not. But to me, it's going to make a difference. And that makes a difference. Because when there's a whale that washes up on Fiji with a belly full of plastic, I want to be able to watch the news and feel sad and not say, I wonder if I had a part in that. I wonder if the plastic that I used to pick up a donut out of the bakery and then ate the donut and threw it away is in the belly of that whale. It's the human mind, and what we do matters, what we say matters, and what we value matters. We value the planet more than money, more than convenience, more than power, and more than the delusion that we can do whatever we want and get away with it. And that is my solution. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the solutions of my fellow panelists. And I'm going to pass it on to Peter.
So, yeah, we seem to have an insurmountable problem, but for humanity, we should not regard any problem as insurmountable. And one of the things that I keep on reminding myself as well as other people is we just have no idea of what we could achieve if the whole of humanity cooperated, got together in cooperation, dedicated all our resources, material and emotional and intellectual, to this one problem. So no matter how bad things get, we really can't say that, we're done in quite yet. But however, I don't think we're identifying the problem. And, this has frequently been said over the ages. If you have a big issue, you have to identify the problem. So, we were talking about the hurricanes and cyclones. But what's causing the hurricanes and cyclones? Well, what's causing them is the fossil fuel industry. We just had another revelation very recently that some more papers have been obtained from Freedom of Information, I believe, which revealed more skullduggery, deception, confusion, and downright crime and evilness from this industry, which is causing all this, which is doing us all in, which is doing the future in, which is worse than anything else. So this fossil fuel industry is killing 10 million people every year, year after year after year. Now, I remember a long time ago, probably getting on for 20 years ago, when Greenpeace was making little magazines and sending them in the mail. That's how you got the information. I remember once starting off and saying, well, we have an enemy here, and the enemy is called fossil fuels. And I guess we lost sight of that because I hate to mention the word, but Exxon and Shell and all the others, they're making war on us, right? They're making war on every child on the planet today. They're making war on all future generations. They're making war on the entire planet. When Antonio Guterres said that we had to stop the war against nature, well, who's doing the war against nature? Primarily the fossil fuels, the banks, and of course the complicit governments. One of my sort of little catchphrases that I came up with was to hope to communicate this is that we have no future with the fossil fuel industry. We have no future with the fossil fuel industry. That should be abundantly clear by now. The only future we have is with the clean, renewable energy industry. So the fossil fuel industry, we now know, is determined to continue until the last drop of oil and the last puff of natural gas, right, is obtained. Well, of course, long before that, they will eradicate, annihilate humanity and most life on the planet. Nevertheless, that is their agenda. It's very clear now. That is their plan. I mean, it's unbelievable, but it is. So we have to take down the fossil fuel industry. There's no other way. And I don't think we've really started on that. I don't, the media occasionally will mention climate change, when one of these cyclones have got, droughts, unprecedented fires, but they won't link with the fossil fuel industry. That's our problem. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's definitely the problem. And I think what's so important is for people to believe that they can do something about this huge entity. And Charles, it's so seldom that we get to see you, so this is quite an honor. I want to hear what you have to say about this climate solution.
Well, hello, and thank you, Peter, Paul, and Regina. I'm happy to be part of this climate panel on climate solutions. And for my contribution, I've decided to focus on ammonia. That's NH3. It's a gas at room temperature, and its boiling point is minus 33.3 degrees Celsius. There are many aspects to consider regarding this material, but I will touch on agriculture and energy storage in this segment. I'm in the process of reading a book by Václav Smil called How the World Really Works, which I would recommend if you're interested in developing a systems-level perspective on how our world, our civilization works, and to get a sense of the numbers involved. One of the paragraphs that struck me was, quote, 4 materials rank highest on the scale of necessity, forming what I have called the 4 pillars of modern civilization: cement, steel, plastics, and ammonia, which are needed in larger quantities than are other essential inputs. So the ammonia part I was a little bit surprised by. But unfortunately, the mass production of these 4 materials is currently heavily dependent on the combustion of fossil fuels, making them major sources of greenhouse gas emissions. Keeping the focus on ammonia, the world now produces 180 million tons of it, and it is no doubt one of the most important materials that has facilitated our civilization to grow as it has, because it is the basis of all nitrogen fertilizers. And to quote Václav again, without their applications, it would be impossible to feed, at current levels, nearly half of today's nearly 8 billion people. So Václav goes on to say that organic fertilizers cannot replace synthetic ammonia. Their low nitrogen content and their worldwide mass are not enough, even if all manures and crop residues were recycled. Of course, there's a number of complex trade-offs that need to be carefully considered regarding the use of fertilizers and their impact on long-term soil health and sustainability. Unfortunately, population growth has pushed civilization in this direction, but there is a movement towards finding ways to transition away from the intensive use of fertilizers, thereby allowing soil health to be restored. And this is well discussed in an article called Why It's Time to Stop Punishing Our Soils with Fertilizers by Richard Haney. All of this ties in with the regenerative agriculture, which is a big topic, too big to go into in my brief segment here. So back to ammonia. So it's important to note that the largest human source of nitrous oxide emissions, that's N2O, a very potent greenhouse gas, as I'm sure many of our viewers know, is from agriculture, which accounts for 67%. That's 67% of human-sourced nitrous oxide. Agriculture creates about 4.5 billion tons of nitrous oxide per year. So what can we do about this? This is where we get into solutions. As already mentioned, there is the regenerative agriculture movement that is slowly spreading. High-income countries could reduce their fertilizer use, eating less meat, wasting less, and China and India, the 2 heavy users, could also reduce their excessive fertilizer applications. But Africa, the continent with the fastest growing population, remains deprived of fertilizers, even as it is already a substantial food importer. Let's understand the process of making ammonia is most commonly made using the Haber-Bosch process, which produces around 1.8% of global carbon dioxide emissions. But there's research being done to discover greener ways of producing ammonia. And a paper put out by Monash University scientists in Australia, led by Professor Doug McFarlane et al., have discovered a process based on phosphonium salts that represent a breakthrough in overcoming this carbon-intensive problem. This news is well covered in a video which we'll link in the description. On the energy front, ammonia could well be a significant contributor to enabling the hydrogen economy by, quote, hydrogen energy storage in ammonia. There's an excellent video by that name, as well as a paper called Ammonia, a renewable fuel made from sun, air, and water could power the globe without carbon, which we'll also link in the description. Also, researchers have developed a highly effective environmentally friendly method for converting ammonia to hydrogen. The new technique is a major step forward for enabling a zero-pollution hydrogen-fueled economy in a paper called New Technique Seamlessly Converts Ammonia to Green Hydrogen. So that's my take on solutions for this video, and I thank our main presenters for the opportunity to do this.
Thanks a lot, Charles. I mean, that is really, really interesting. And I really like the pillars as you laid them out. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and for offering to share the links and the information regarding this book that you're reading in the description, because I think a lot of people will find that interesting as well. So thank you. And next up, last but definitely not least, Paul.
Thank you. So for a long time, I've been saying that the solutions, the things we need to try to address the climate change crisis can be thought of as a three-legged bar stool, where the first leg is to slash fossil fuel emissions. And, as Peter says, we can either survive and exist on this planet without fossil fuel companies and fossil fuels, or we can all collapse on this planet with maintaining and even expanding fossil fuels, because we can't have both. So that's the first leg of the bar stool, but we've left it too late. So I firmly believe that we will need to do some solar radiation management to cool the Arctic, for example, to buy us time to slash the fossil fuel production and emissions into the atmosphere, and give us time to actually draw down the CO2 and other greenhouse gases that are currently in the atmosphere. So the drawdown, the removal of CO2 and methane in the atmosphere ocean system is the vital third leg of this three-legged bar stool. So, and I've talked a lot about this in my own video channel, and I've been talking about this for many, many years. But what I want to bring to the table right now is just to talk about briefly some of the current books that are out there very recently that look at solution ideas and can give people hope that, there are lots of people thinking about, addressing the climate catastrophe. So the first book is called Climate Restoration, The Only Future That Will Sustain the Human Race, and it's by Peter Fiakowski with Carol Douglas. So Peter, we've had sessions with him at previous climate conferences, at the COP, for example, Glasgow, and he's put all of his ideas into this book. And the gist of climate restoration and the Climate Restoration Foundation, Peter's work, is that there's room for optimism. I'll just read a couple passages from the beginning. He says, we now have ways to take CO2 and methane out of the air at an enormous scale. Climate restoration is helping nature restore itself to the conditions in which humankind has thrived for thousands of years. It's the start of a dramatic transformation that will lead to a vibrant future rather than a catastrophic one. So the whole premise is to get back the CO2 levels in the atmosphere to what they were, say, a century ago, sort of thing. And that is absolutely vital to reduce the radiative forcing that is sending the temperatures of our planet into overdrive. So here's another book which I just picked up. It's called The Future Is Now. Bob McDonald, he's the host of CBC's Quirks and Quarks, which is a weekly show on all different science topics. He's talking about, in this book, solving the climate crisis with today's technologies. So he says, The technology to produce energy without carbon emissions already exists. There's as much solar energy beaming down from the sky onto the earth every hour that humanity consumes in an entire year. Energy blows on the wind, boils out of the ground, and literally grows on trees. A new green age is upon us. So it's not a technological problem. The problem is doing it. He's talking about the renewable energy revolution for the most part in this book. There's all kinds of other books. This one is kind of interesting, by Tom Heap. It's 39 ways to save the planet. It's a bit of more of a sort of machine gun approach. He basically says, we got ourselves into this. Here's how we get out. And he has a number of different suggestions. Meet the heroes hacking climate change, whether in lab coats or wellies. Wellies, if you don't know, are the rubber boots. That's a British term. Wetsuits or sharp suits. Their ingenuity is amazing and their optimism is inspiring. Wind turbine robots, gravity batteries, solar rafts, sunken seaweed farms, wooden skyscrapers, grazing elk, slippery ships, zealous lawyers, and roving gas hunters, all stepping up to cut carbon. These are deliverable solutions, some proven and growing, others encouraging and craving uptake, all ideas to root for. This is the way we must find the will. So again, it's the human will that is the most important in all of these ideas, solutions. Another one here is called How to Save Our Planet. The facts, little handbook here saying we're in a climate emergency. We must act now. There are many books on climate change. Some want to scare you, some want to preach at you, but this book is different. It's for anyone and everyone. It presents a lot of the facts and says basically the future of the planet is in our hands. So there's lots of literature. Now, just to finish up my segment, Charles talked about ammonia and farming. George Monbiot, who I'm sure you've heard of, this is his book that is just being published, just came out. It's called Regenesis, Feeding the World Without Devouring the Planet. And in a nutshell, he's saying farming practices have to completely change. And if they do, can end global hunger and slow down or even halt the climate catastrophe. The solution's right under our feet. So his focus is on what we can do with soils to get soils to capture more and more carbon. So there's lots of material out there. I'm sure you might have your own ideas about what to do, and you can write your own book about it.
Paul, that's really great. I appreciate all your book suggestions. And of course, we're going to link all that in the description. We also have a mirrored page on the website for each video, and the links will all be there as well. So I wanted to mention a fellow by the name of Neil Kitching, who's written some really great blog posts for our website. And he has a book out called Carbon Choices. And I think it's a really great book for the average person. If they want to know what they can do about climate change, a lot of it comes down to choices we make, carbon choices. And this book goes over many of the things that you can do, for example, becoming vegetarian or just simply eating less meat, changing our way that we heat, changing the way that we get around.
Okay, I just want to mention that Neil is based in Scotland, which is very beautiful. We were in Scotland last year for COP26, and Neil covers a number of topics, and he talks about how people buy like way too many clothes than they need, and how he went through the inventory of his closet, and then he was questioning his consumption. And he also talks about electric vehicles, and I do know that he recently bought a Nissan Leaf and is now a proud Leaf owner. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Neil, because he has been helping us out on our website with contributing some blogs.
That's great. I mean, thank you so much, Charles and Heidi. And thank you too, Paul, for sharing all those book references. I mean, that's kind of great because it goes back again to the human mind, doesn't it? I just find that when you read books like that, it can be inspiring. Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, did a lot to do away with DDT, at least in this country, the use of DDT. The pen is mightier than the sword. The mind is the most powerful thing on the planet. And only by harnessing the human mind can we conquer the fossil fuel industry and do whatever it is that we are each able to do in this time of crisis. So I would like to ask you, our audience, to share your ideas. What are some positive things that can come to the fore to help this climate catastrophe that we are in and will continue to be in? What do you think? What are some of your ideas? Please share them with us. And if we left out one of your favorite books, put that in there as well. Additionally, one of the things that you can do, like this video, doesn't sound like a lot, but it is, because it helps us with YouTube in terms of like the rankings and how many people get to see it. So when you like, share, and subscribe, you are doing a lot to help spread the word about climate change, global warming, and what we can all do in the midst of this crisis. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time at Climate Emergency Forum.